Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Two Stewards Show. My name is Mark. I'm here with Brent. Hello, Brent.
Hey, Mark. How's it going?
Good, thanks. And today we've got a guest on. Special guest. It is it's Gary Leland, a.k.a. the Bitcoin Boomer. Welcome, Gary.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to it. It's nice to get on a show where we don't talk about Bitcoin for an hour. We talk about a lot of stuff.
Well, we're going to. Just be forewarned if you're listening. We're going to talk about Bitcoin, but in a wider context, I think. So that'll be good. We were just talking beforehand off the air how you don't always talk about Bitcoin at parties anymore, Gary, because not everybody's interested. And your wife had to kind of give you the gears a little bit.
For years, she used to give me, do not talk about Bitcoin when we go in this party.
How, just, I guess, off the top, if you're the Bitcoin boomers here in that generation, how would you broach the subject, or what are some of the questions that boomers would have for you about Bitcoin? Like, this is high tech kind of stuff. Like, yeah, why are
they
you
always
into
ask what it's backed by? That's probably the number one question they ask.
Right.
That I don't think they ask that about the U.S. dollar, so it kind of confuses you. You know, they spend the dollar all damn day and don't ask that, but all of a sudden on Bitcoin, they got to know what it's backed by. You know, so that's probably the number one question. And then I think the other issue they have is for some reason, they keep thinking it's a stock, you know, and they relate it to stocks because it's not a currency as far as they're concerned. So it must be a stock. And they want to know things like, you know, do you like, when it gets to a certain dollar amount, sell half of it, you know, like I do with my, I'm like, no, you know, so it's hard to explain because they can't get over the fact that it's not a stock, and they keep wanting, and then they are stuck on mining too. I don't understand this mining. And I'm always kind of like, do you know how email works? And they go, no, not really. I said, well, do you ask that all the time, or do you just use it? I mean, it's been here 14 years. I think it's proved it works after 14 years. So they ask unimportant questions that they need to find out. So that's the biggest thing with boomers, is they're stuck in that mind frame.
Yeah.
So you at some point, Gary, made a transition, I'm guessing. Like, so you've done a lot of stuff in your life. We should kind of go through that, like entrepreneurial wise, starting businesses, you know, probably seeing the internet come to fruition, seeing email, now seeing Bitcoin. Like, how did you make that jump? But maybe just kind of go through a bit of your backstory. Like, what primed you to look into something like Bitcoin when it came along?
Well, actually, I didn't look at it soon enough, to be honest with you. First person who told me about it, I guess Bitcoin was according to him, it was $100 a Bitcoin. And he explained it to me like online stocks. He said, hey, do you know about Bitcoin? I said, no. He goes, it's like online stocks. And I said, well, I'm not interested then. And that was the end of the conversation. And then I saw him, you know, next time I saw him, Bitcoin was $5,000. And I said to him, you son of a, you cost me millions of dollars, you know, because of your online stock stuff. I bought it a couple years later, where if you just told me what it was, I probably would have bought it right away, and I'd have had way more. And he goes, well, you were an old guy, so I thought maybe you'd understand online stocks better. And I said, yeah, I understand online stocks, and knew I didn't want to do them. But actually, you know, I found out about it early, you know, because I found out it way before it got to $5,000. But I really saw it right away once it was explained to me properly. And I think that's because I'd been involved in the net so long. You know, I started my first e-commerce site in 96. And I had a wallpaper store. I had the largest wallpaper store in Texas, which we sold recently. And I wanted to make a website where people could come and buy wallpaper. And so I contacted the manufacturers and said, hey, could you send me images I could use on the website of the patterns? And they asked me, what do you need this for? And I said, well, I'm going to build a website to sell wallpaper. And said, that's stupid. That's never going to work. We're not even going to send you pictures. I mean, all they had to do was click an email, and they wouldn't even do it. So we had to buy they didn't have digital cameras at the time, so we bought a scanner. and we would cut pages out of wallpaper books and scan them. And we built a page, and it took off really quick because it was like the first website for wallpaper. My biggest competitor were screensavers, wallpaper backgrounds. Those were my big competitors. And, to come up number one on, well, it wasn't even Google back then, I think InfoSeek and Hotbot were the two biggest back then. And it was crazy, you'd be number one. I'd check in the morning and I'm number one. I'd look in the afternoon and go, shit, I'm number two. So I just go to the bottom of the page, and the background was white. So with white letters, I would just put the word wallpaper on there about another 100 times, copy and paste it 100 times, and refresh the page and look an hour later, and I'd be number one again. That's how easy it was to manipulate back then.
Old school
but
SEO.
that took off. Yeah, that worked pretty good. And that
Those
took
were
off
the
pretty
days.
quick. Those were the days. But now, can you imagine how long that page would be? It'd be like 20 miles long. But it was it took off really well, and slowly but surely, all the manufacturers, as their reps came in, they said, "We have an apology from the marketing department for not helping you earlier." And so that was kind of nice to hear. But I did a lot of websites like that. I was pretty involved. I started the first e-commerce site for girls fast pitch softball. Until then, they all used men's softball websites or baseball websites. And I had a daughter that played softball, and I couldn't get any equipment for her in the fall, especially. Like one year, she had to use football cleats because we couldn't get softball and baseball cleats. So I started that, and that was an overnight success because there were a lot of people in the same situation. We went from, I was building it at home and stuff, and the guys in the office were working on Leland's wallpaper. And then 1 month, after a few months working on it, we got up to $5,000 in sales. And I said, gosh, if we really start working on this, we could make some money. So I told all the guys, quit working on the wallpaper website. We're just working on the softball website from here on out. And this is exactly almost how it went. Like the next month we did 10,000. The next month we did 20,000. The next month we did 40,000. Next month we did 80,000. It was growing with those kind of numbers. It was mind-boggling. And back then we took checks. We were getting checks in the mail all the time, and it was crazy how fast that grew. But if you find something that there's a need for, you're going to grow really quick at anything. And that's the way that both of those websites were that way.
What were you actually selling there? You're selling equipment, or you're connecting the dots between?
No, we were buying and warehousing equipment. At first, I was calling people. None of the major suppliers would deal with me at first because it was new for them. So I would call people who made like training aids. There are a ton of people, who actually made training aids, like a thing to help you hold the ball better, or thing to hang your glove right, or blah blah blah, thing to back tape of a certain type. So we'd call them, and I remember we would say, "Here's what we want to do. We want to buy this from you, but we'll send you an address to ship it to, and then we'll pay for it." And they go, "I don't understand." I say, "Well, we don't want you to ship it to us. We want you to ship it to," because they had never heard of drop shipping. It was so new. Yeah. And they were like, "Okay, but that doesn't make any sense to me." We were like, "Don't worry about it." So we would do these things. And then slowly but surely we found distributors.
It's like in their eyes, you look really generous as you're just sending stuff to everybody around the world.
Yeah, it's kind of like Bitcoin. People can't understand it. People couldn't understand drop shipping, as simple as that seems. But when anything's new, old people have a hard time understanding it. Let's face it. They wouldn't even have a computer. Most of the people my age wouldn't have a computer if it wasn't for the phone. They wouldn't use a computer, where now they use a computer every day, but maybe they'd have a computer and they'd use it once a month because I got to use my computer to look at my online bank account, and they'd be dreading it or something. The phone has really helped out people getting computerized, especially old people.
Well, how did you get over that hurdle? Like, did you outsource all the coding and the website development, or you to learn that yourself and teach yourself?
Well, I was going to teach myself, and I can work my way through it. I might have to look up something if I'm trying to do a particular thing. But I was going to hire someone, and I was talking to some people about hiring them, and I think one day I got a phone call from someone that said, "Hey, I understand you're looking for someone to do coding." And I said, "Sure, I am." And they said, "Well, I do coding, and I charge $75 an hour, blah, 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 blah." And their voice sounded kind of funny to me. It's kind of breaking up. And I said to him, I said, "How old are you?" he goes, I'm 14. This was like in 96. So $75 an hour was a lot more in 96 than it is now. So I said, okay, well, I'll give you a call back. And I got on the phone and called the local high school about a mile away and said, I need to talk to the computer teacher. And I said, hey, do you have any kids there that can make a website? She goes, oh, every one of them can. I said, well, would you tell a couple of them I'm hiring? So I started hiring like high school kids to do my website. And I had them all work in my office. I set up desks all in the room there. And most of them would come in at like 10th or 11th grade and stay with me till they got out of college, because the local University of Texas at Arlington was half a mile down the road. So they loved the job because they could come in, work their own hours. If they wanted to go out to a school event or had to do some event thing for school, they could take off. But they'd usually, and most of them ended up graduating in computer science. So they got really good. By the time they were juniors and seniors in college, they were really good. And they were training the younger ones that came in. So it was like a wheel going. So I really didn't have to learn that much. I just have to, I guess, review everything, because I'd review something. I'd go, how in the hell do you buy something on this website? I can't even figure it out. And I'm kind of like literate at it. And they go, oh, they can't figure that out. They shouldn't be on our website. And I go, well, that's not really going to be our approach here. But I remember I get phone calls. This is just one more story about that, because this is kind of a funny, humorous story. I get phone calls all the time. And people go, hey, I see this glove on your website I want to get. How do I buy that? And I go, well, do you see that button that says click here to buy? We were that specific. Yeah, I see that. I said, well, click it. Well, that's it? That's it. Just click where it says click here to buy. Okay, thanks. And they'd hang it. So that's how much the web has changed, I guess.
Yeah. I was going to say, what year was that?
Oh, that probably was like 2000. Well, it had to be 2000. We started the softball website in 2000.
Okay.
Or up till 2000 at least.
So, Gary, I'm in the position where, like, I've got young children, 10 and under, and I'm, trying to explain to them, like, the world before the internet, right, or before the widely available internet, and how, like, I feel like we were early adopters in my house, right? We had one of the first cable modems in the area and so forth. So this was like early 90s, and what made you, because I didn't really, I was young, so it was something new and cool, fine. But what made you think, like, hey, this would be a good idea, like an e-commerce, I'm sure you didn't even call it that at that point, but what made you think, like, I could sell stuff on this here internet? Like, what made you think that was a good idea?
I just was, once I hooked up a computer, I had the original Macs, and once I hooked that up to the computer, to the net, I was like mesmerized. I couldn't get off of it. I just found it the whole concept that I could, on my computer, chat with some guy in Europe, or I could send files or whatever. I just found it so mesmerizing that I couldn't get off. My wife was always on my ass. Turn that computer off and come in here, and so I guess I've always thought I was pretty good at seeing possibilities of what could come, or I don't know what the correct term would be, but I saw it right away when I got onto it. It's kind of like, podcasting. I was one of the first 50 podcasters that there were. I'm in the Podcast Hall of Fame, and I saw that immediately. And everybody I would tell about it, they go, oh, that's stupid. Why would anyone want that? They all got a radio in their car. I'm going, no, this is way better. You'll quit listening to the radio. And that was before the iPhone. You had to take your iPod. When you got home at night, you had to plug it in, and it took overnight to download all your shows. And you had to really work if you wanted to listen to a podcast, but it was already way better than the radio, even with that work. And people were just like, that's stupid. And so in the same way for Bitcoin, so I don't know why, but I've always seemed to, or I'm not going to say always, but a lot of the things I found interesting turned out to become mainstream, later. Yeah.
That's interesting, because Mark and I just discussed this in a previous episode, that one of our local radio stations just went out of business, like 97 years, and they just pulled the plug a couple weeks ago. And not really any explanation other than, like you can probably guess, it's just old news, right? Like, who's listening to the radio?
They should have adopted Bitcoin. They had everything. Podcasting, they had microphones, they had people, they had a studio. They had everything they needed. But for some reason, I never understood that either with radio stations. They had all this content. I mean, they were creating content all day long, but they never wanted to repurpose it and use it any other way. I never understood that. Now, you like when you look at YouTube as an example, Fox News is on there, CNN's on there, everybody's on there with their regular content, reusing it, repurposing it, which has always been my big deal, is repurposing your content. Most of my videos and podcast sites or media sites were all advertising mechanisms for me. I had a lot of those, a lot of shows, and they all were just to market my products. It's a lot easier to me to just and a lot cheaper and more efficient to make your own content to advertise instead of like paying someone to advertise on their show. If it's that good of a value, just make your own show and make it particularly for your product. That it's good. Like we used to do. Did you ever see the TV show Fixer Upper, where they work on these houses and we had the Fixer Upper podcast for them, and we owned the wallpaper decorating store. So we would do the Fixer Upper podcast after every episode and say, "Did you see that wallpaper in the kitchen of that house that they decorated tonight?" My wife,
beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's out of the Jones Blair book, and we have that book. If you're interested, give us a call. We would sell tons of wallpaper out of that their show. They had their own wallpaper, so we had their wallpaper books. But to me, that's the way to market: is create your own content.
So would you? I'm picking up a theme here, Gary. Like, would you describe yourself as a marketer first and foremost?
Yes. Yeah, I am a marketer. No, I am, without a doubt. I consider myself a marketer, and I think I'm a marketer, but I also think I'm someone with a short attention span. And once I start getting so that I'm really good at something, I want to move on to something else. Because your rate of, I don't know if adoption is the word, of rate of learning is really fantastic at something when you first are learning it. I mean, there's a lot to learn. But after you were doing it for 5 or 6 years, okay, I'm not learning that much. It's the same thing over and over and over, and I start getting bored with it, and I guess that's why I moved to something new. Something new comes out, it's shiny, I don't know anything about it, and so I move over to that. And I try to keep the past thing going, which I do. I've really been bad at selling businesses. I usually kept them going until I retired, But I definitely consider myself. Actually, when I was in 3rd grade, I think, or 4th grade, me and my next door neighbor, Robert Gitzinger, we had to do skits, and we did a cigarette commercial that we made up. And then the next year, I did a Bactine commercial. That was a medication you put on for mosquito bites, for mosquito bites and things like that. Right. So I used to make my own commercials when I was a kid. So I guess I've been into that a long time.
So was that all self-taught then, or you're like reading books, or?
No, it was all self-taught. Yeah. I kind of always, I'm a big believer, and I've said this many, many times. I believe everybody has a superpower. And I know there's books, I'm sure there are books that say this, but I haven't read them. This is just my feelings about myself. I think everybody has a superpower, but most people just don't know what their superpower is. And they don't realize what their superpower is. And I really think my superpower, my life, has always been looking at things like the common Joe. No matter how much I know about it. It's like the buying on the e-commerce sites. Looking at it like, I could figure out how to buy that product I was talking about earlier, but the average person would go, I'm getting out of Dodge here. This is way too complicated to use. So I think looking at stuff like the average Joe looks at stuff. I know that sounds like a stupid superpower, but I think that's mine, is being able to see things in plain language, basically.
And then take the steps you need as a business person to, I guess, work the back end so that there's a sale at some point.
Right. I didn't, I just graduated high school. I didn't go to college. I went right into the workforce. So I had to learn it all. I came from a manual labor family, which is fine. I mean, my dad was a welder. My brother was a welder. So my whole street worked at the naval shipyard. I just wanted to follow my granddaddy, who was an insurance salesman. So I wanted to follow his footsteps instead of my father's footsteps. And so I went down.
What do you think about the value of education these days? I don't know how it's changed over the years, but
well, I think I was a big believer in college with my kids, and I paid for them both to go to college, all their expenses, but they only had 4 years. So they got out in 4 years with no debt, or they could stay 5 or 6 and have some debt. And they both got out in 4 years,
Yeah.
which is hard to do, but they'd have to take accelerated classes when they got home. And I was a real big believer in education. And I still believe education is a good thing to get. I don't think you can get too much education, but now I think you really have to sit back and look at the cost of education versus what you get. It's not a good
Like
value
you mean
proposition.
formal, like
Yes.
formal education at university, or
Yeah, it's not a good value proposition for a lot of people. Let's face it. Many people get a degree in communications or in something like that, and they come out $50,000 to $100,000 in debt if they go to. I mean, I don't know what it costs today, but I'm sure it's a lot more than when my kids went. And they got a degree that they're going to get a job, and they're not even going to use that degree in their job. Now, if you're an engineer or a doctor, I mean, there are some of them that it is a good value proposition, but there's some that it's not a good value proposition. So it's not like going to college is an automatic ticket to success. They start out, I think they learn some skills and they meet some people who could help them in life later on, and they do learn some skills, but I don't think that I just don't know if it's worth the value they're paying for those skills. So it's not like it used to be when I was a kid, which I didn't go. That wasn't discussed in our household. Our household, we discussed, are you going to go down to the naval shipyard? You get out of school, high school next month. Dad will take you down there. And he did. He took me down to the naval shipyard and said, go in there and they're going to have a test in about an hour you can take. And I went there and said, man, I don't want to work here. And I just answered every question A and left in like 10 minutes. And my dad, 2 weeks later, he came in and goes, I'm really confused, Gary. You're the smartest one in our family. And your brother passed the test. He goes, I even damn passed the test. And you failed. I'm confused. I said, well, it was a really hard test, Dad. I just felt like that was a turning point. I was going to be in that rut if I started that. I don't know why I felt that way, but I didn't want to. I remember he even let me use his car to get home. That was a big deal, using my dad's car. Our family car was a race car. And every Friday night, we'd all be at the drag strip, while he raced the family car, so.
With everybody in it? Or?
No, we don't have to sit on the side. we don't have to sit
modified.
in the pit. Yeah. What was that, like a 1972 Plymouth GTX with a Hemi in it? And that thing could fly. I remember one night this has nothing to do with marketing, but it's a great story. We were coming home one night, my dad and I, and we lived on this island, and it just had like a 2-lane road going to the island over a bridge and stuff for a ways. It's called James Island, South Carolina, out of Charleston. And we pulled up to a light, and this cop car pulled up beside us. And the cop car went boom, boom. And my dad went boom, boom. And the light turned green, and we both took off. My dad and his cop car. My dad beat the hell out of him. And he pulled over, and here comes the cop car, and he pulls over, and they get out, and they talk for a while, and then we head home. So things were different back then.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, it sounds like you're a bit of an unusual boomer. Like, I don't know, being into technology, being into social media, Twitter, podcasting, all these things. I don't know. And then Bitcoin.
So, okay, I want to hit the marketing angle a little bit more, Gary, because you could tell a story, right? And so I'm not one of those guys who can see the internet, see things like you can and be like, oh, this is going to be a thing. I got to be dumb and let other people blaze the path. But, and I've come to realize in business after much trial and error, marketing is the linchpin of your business. And I don't know, is it the ability to tell a good story? Is that the best way to market, do you think?
While I can tell a story, when I tell a story, I'm kind of uncomfortable to a degree, and I'm scared I'm taking up too much of people's time, and that they're I believe they're getting bored with me for some reason. So I think it probably is a great thing. I just don't think I'm as good at it as I could be. Now, my wife, she can talk for an hour and not stop, where I'm going to condense that hour down into 5 minutes because I'm scared I'm wasting people's times and they're getting bored with me or something. So, but I think marketing is one of the things about marketing is being able to make friends, being able to make people feel like they're friends if they're not your friends, I think is an important part. To me, I like everybody I pretty much ever meet. So it's pretty easy. So I think that helps if when people leave a conversation or leave let's just put it this way, marketing is a conversation. Maybe it's a one-sided conversation, but it is a conversation. But at that conversation, you can make people feel like, hey, that was a pretty good guy. I enjoyed talking to him. You're halfway there. I think that builds trust. That builds a lot of things. Like getting back to my wife. If we're at the airport and there's 30 people in line getting the tickets, I go to the bathroom, I come back, she knows everybody in line. They all, hey, see you later. I mean, she's like really good at it. And it's just her natural way she grew up. So, but I think that building relations, I guess, is what it is my marketing is. I want them to come back and see me. My marketing has always been week after week, the same kind of content over and over, building relations. It's like I do a conference now, which I'm not promoting the conference at this moment, but my conference, I always wanted to be, it's the second conference I've built, and I always wanted it to be like a family reunion. So if someone said, hey, are you going to this conference? Or do you want to go to the beach next month? Because I can't. That's when Gary's conference is. I want to go. All my friends are there. So I've tried to build relationships like a family reunion. So, but I think relationship building is the best kind of marketing.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking is one of the things we've been talking about lately in our podcast. Like, we're about stewardship, and so our viewpoint, we're Christian. Our viewpoint is everything we have is given to us, and we have to do the best that we can with it, whether that's finances, intelligence, family, whatever. And we have questions from younger folks. I'm not in that category anymore, but what do I do, right? And one of the conclusions we've come to, which not everybody agrees with, I get it, but is, build a household. And that household, if you can, should, children, that's great. Absolutely. But also, the idea of sort of the family business. And again, I know this is not for everybody, but, it could include things like, podcasting. We're encouraging people to do that. And then just the marketing angle. So that's kind of why I'm asking, because a big part of a business is marketing. And for young people, I think it's really important to learn those skills. Even if you're going into like plumbing, I love the trades and encourage people to get into that instead of doing the 4 years of college and $200,000 in debt, right? Just go out, start making money right away. But you need to learn marketing and these other things too, that's why I'm peppering you with questions about the marketing side. Like, how do you do it? What's, how does that work? So, as we talk, if you have,
Well, I think of what you're saying there. The thing I'd like to interject, which we were real big with our kids, is you should have your kids working with you a lot. I mean, at an early age. To me, that's real important. Our kids worked with us because we were hustling, trying to make a living, when our kids were young, 2 and 3 years old. We were out there on Sunday afternoons, kids in baby seats in the back of the car, going door to door, trying to sell products, because we had to make money. And we worked all the time. And we had our kids with us. We couldn't leave them anywhere, and we wanted them with us. And so we'd make a family event out of it. And so our kids became really good workers. They really did. And as later we moved into brick and mortar stores, they came to the brick and mortar stores and worked. They do filing, and we paid them just like we would an adult. I mean, back then, I don't know what minimum wage was. Maybe it was $7 an hour. They were kids in 5th grade getting $7 an hour, saving their money because they worked as good as any adult we would get. So we paid them like that, and they learned a lot of skills. And I've always said, one thing I think that people are doing their kids a disservice that they don't take the time to bring them and work with them. Because one thing I did learn about hiring people, because I preferred being around young people than old people when it came to work. Because young people can be good workers, but so many of them are what I call allergic to work. They've never worked, and they're just allergic to it. They are. But my kids were not allergic to it, and they shined like crazy. My one daughter went to Texas A&M, and we put her in a private dorm. It was a nice dorm. And while she was a freshman, she was asked to work there. And they usually didn't do that until they were juniors. Only juniors and seniors could work. And here they asked my daughter as a freshman, and she got free room and board, which was like maybe $10,000 a year. And she goes, I'd like to have this job, but I want to get the money you were paying on. My daughter was smart. She was a freshman out of college. She goes, but I want the money that you're paying right now for room and board. And we were like, well, we're going to pay that anyway. And we wouldn't expect you to be working for free. That wasn't part of the deal. So she was making, while she was in college for 4 years, $10,000 a year, just living at the dorm, handling stupid problems. Like someone had a noise complaint or someone was smoking pot in their dorm or who knows what. So my kids definitely were great workers, but they started at a young age. And I think that's a lot of it. I think that those kids that are allergic to work, they just were never exposed to it. And it may not be their parents' fault. Their parents probably worked for someone else and they couldn't take them, to the office every day and have them hang out. My mom did when I was little. She worked for a stockbroker, and she'd take me to the office all the time. I loved to go in there. I had an adding machine, and I'd play with that adding machine all day. So I think that's a really thing people should really consider with their kids is.
Well, what about your? So you're talking about your kids, but what about I'm assuming they have kids now,
right?
What about their kids? Would they have the same mindset, or you think that that's rubbed off on that or that generation?
I think they would have the same mindset, but like I said earlier, maybe it's because they're in different. Like my son-in-law is a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force working up in D.C. He really can't take him into the NSA area with him. Come on, kids, you're going to NSA headquarters today.
Don't push that
button. He can't do that. And my daughter, runs a hospital. She can't have him running around the hospital. So there is a different situation. But my daughter's just started a side gig with running, like kids running. She's a marathon runner. She ran the Boston Marathon and stuff, and she has them running. And already my other daughter has had her son, who's running in Baltimore or up near D.C., doing commercials, making commercials, film commercials, and one came out today. I saw it on their page, so I shared it. So I think they would if they had the opportunity. They've got to Jess down. We had a fun time working together. We made it fun. It was great. We had a good time with them as kids working.
Yeah, I think that's. My parents always had like a cleaning business, and so I was always, all of us kids worked in that business in some way, shape, or form. So when it comes to like hard work, I don't know a lot, but I know how to work, and because I just got that at a young age, right?
And that's a lot of success is putting in the time and working. My gosh, how many people? How many times do you hear people saying, "Oh yeah, it's 5 o'clock, I'm off work. I'm out of here." Instead of staying that little bit of extra time. I don't know how many times I was locking up the softball store, and someone drove up, and they said, "Oh man, I drove over here, wanted to get a bat." I'm going, "Come on in." I'd do all the unlocking of the gates and stuff to get back in because it was my store, and I wanted to get that money and have a good customer. Where if it was someone else's business, they wouldn't care. They just say, "Oh, we're closed already," even though I'm standing here and it'd take me 5 seconds to unlock that door. So I think hard work is a good thing to learn, even if you don't want to do that for a career, which my parents didn't teach me. My mom used to take me to the office, but I just messed around. They really didn't teach me much. So I would have been better at it if I'd had parents that were it, and I think my kids would be better at it because I worked with them.
Yeah. So okay, you mentioned. The conference, BitBlock Boom is the name, right? And you want to have do a family reunion. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's a Bitcoin conference. We do it every year in April in Dallas, Texas, and it's Bitcoin. And the reason I'm saying that, most of your listeners, since they're not Bitcoiners, won't understand. There's Bitcoin, and then there's like 30,000 cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is not one of the cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is a thing, just like the US dollar is a thing. And then there's cryptocurrencies, which are all these ones you hear about that are scam coins. Some of them might not be, but they're going to still probably go broke. People are going to lose all their money, where Bitcoin is beyond that. Bitcoin is a whole different thing. And there's a ton of people across the world that are interested in Bitcoin. There are millions of people who have Bitcoin wallets with Bitcoin on it. But it's only like 3% of the population right now. And let me say right now, I'm not selling Bitcoin. I don't have any Bitcoin I want to sell. So if anyone's listening to this, you don't need to worry about, you're going to hear from me to sell you Bitcoin. I'm not selling any. I've been buying now for 8 years, and I'm still buying. So I'm not selling. So to me, Bitcoin is in a situation right now, kind of like the dollars. People who believe the dollar is like quickly losing its value are the ones that are buying Bitcoin and they're not selling it. You do have people who are like stock manipulators who want to buy Bitcoin, sell it at a profit, buy it back later. People who come to my conference aren't those kind of people. They're the kind of people that want to learn more about Bitcoin. Maybe they're preppers at heart, and they're not buying food and bags and knives and guns. They believe that when this all falls apart, they'll have Bitcoin and they can buy food and bags and guns with their Bitcoin, because it'll be, I guess, like gold, except for gold is really heavy. I mean, let's face it, if you've got $100,000 worth of gold, you aren't getting out of the country with it if you have to. If the end comes, they're going to take that away from you at the airport or at the border. Where Bitcoin, you could have $1 billion worth and you just have to memorize 12 numbers, and you can take it with you anywhere in the world. And when you get there with those 12 numbers, you can have it back. So that's what the Bitcoin is about. And these are all people who come to my conference who want to learn more about Bitcoin and
so
talk to other Bitcoiners. It's purely educational
event. Yeah.
They have, let's put it this way. If you live in small town in North Dakota, town of 500 people, you don't even know anyone that owns any Bitcoin to talk to them about it. You don't. You watch YouTube videos and listen to podcasts, but you don't know anyone one-on-one. So when you come to my conference, you'll meet 1,000 people who are like-minded, and you can talk to them, and you can say, hey, blah, 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 or how are you handling this security thing for your Bitcoin, or where are you buying your Bitcoin at? And you can, so it's an educational networking thing. I'm a big networker. I go to a lot of conferences, always have since the get-go, but I've never sat in sessions and watched anything and made notes. I'm not one of those people. I can do all that later on YouTube. I like hanging out in the hallways and networking. I've made a lot of money networking in the hallways, just from someone telling me something or explaining something to me where, like I said, I don't travel 500 miles and pay $500, let's say, to go to a conference to watch it when I can do it on YouTube for free. I could stay home and do that, so anyone going to a conference, I recommend you hang out in the hallway and make friends instead of sitting at a table by yourself taking notes. Then when you get home, go to YouTube and watch it.
Yeah, after this point, there's going to be a whole bunch of people in the hallways. once people listen to this show.
Well, that's where all the action's at a conference.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
No, I would agree. You mentioned gold, and I'm curious, like people who are boomers, when you say gold, like do they immediately think of a solid option for, what if the currency collapses? We should have some gold in our back pocket.
I don't talk to a lot of people about gold, but I believe they'd find it easier to accept gold than they do Bitcoin, because a lot of them still don't know that the dollar isn't backed by gold, because they'll say to me, well, what's that Bitcoin backed by? I say, well, what's the dollar backed by? And I go, gold? I say, man, they took it off the gold back in 71. I mean, well, really? So they would be more apt. They subconsciously feel that's better. But some people just don't get gold, because I was talking to a guy and we were talking about gold. I do remember, and he goes, I just don't understand how you get your money back out of that. And I go, well, you just sell it. Well, where would I go sell that? Well, probably the same place you bought it, because they need something to sell. They aren't going to give you the same price they're selling it for. But, if you paid, like 2 years ago, gold was, I do keep up with it a little bit, was about $2,000 an ounce. Today, it's $2,500 an ounce. So they're not going to give you $2,500, but you might get $2,300, an ounce. And they're going to make their money. I'm not sure how it works, because I'm not a gold guy. But gold is better than having nothing for your for the rainy day. Let's face it, we're $35 trillion in debt right now, and we added $1 trillion every 3 months to the debt of the United States. I mean, I thought it was a lot at 20 trillion, but now we're at 35 trillion. I know that someday it's going to be. Let me put it this way: if they can just print money like that, why are they taxing us at all? Why aren't they wanting everybody to get as rich as they can, and they can just print it and give it away to the other people? Why? I don't understand the whole mechanism behind it. I mean, if they can just print all they want and we're never going to go bankrupt because of it, I mean, they don't need to take your money and anyone else's money. Yeah. They should be going, well, we're glad you've made it to the rich man. Now we got to get these other people up there. We'll print and give them some money.
there's no real world consequence. Like why do they have to tax?
Yeah, I mean, if they can print all they want, but you have like the BRICS nations going now. That's more and more countries are joining the BRICS nations and getting off of the U.S. dollar. We just lost Saudi Arabia's contract that Kissinger started with them to only buy oil and dollars is ended. So I mean, that's not something that's going to kill us the next day, but it's going to slowly but surely move things off the U.S. dollar. The dollar is not the supreme currency it was, and I hope it stays forever for my kids and grandkids, because as a nation, gosh, we have such an advantage being the world currency. I mean, for instance, we can print $35 trillion of debt. You can't do that unless you're a world currency. But, I'm afraid that eventually we'll probably maintain it longer than other countries did, but eventually every world currency, changes. It used to be the pound. It used to be the Netherlands had it. French had it. I mean, it's gone through a lot of people that had control of the world currency, and we've had it for about 100 years now. And so about 100 years is the average lifespan of a world currency. And so I think we'll keep it longer than anyone else did. But it'll end someday for sure. And we're seeing the first signs of it, like I said, with inflation. I saw a thing the other day, since 1986, the currency, U.S. dollar, has gone down 25%. That's not that long ago, 25%. I saw that this morning. So now you got me on my... See, now you got me talking about the stuff my wife tells me not to talk about.
Hey, that's okay. This is your avenue to talk about it.
What are there any other hard assets that you like, Gary? We're both in real estate. That's kind of how we started the podcast, anyways. And also Bitcoin, absolutely. But for me, Bitcoin
real estate is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying Bitcoin is like. Off. No. It's good. It's good conversation. Bitcoin is like a buy and hold, whereas I still need to make money now and, in the shorter term. So for me, we work in real estate, we hold real estate as well and get cash flow and stuff. So, any thoughts on that?
I think real estate is a good thing to hold. In Bitcoin, you hodl. Everywhere else you hold. But in Bitcoin, right. You hodl. But, real estate by itself, I don't think it's necessarily a great, it's good, but I don't think it's great to hold. But if you are able to have the property and make income off the property, that's a whole different deal. Now it's really moved it up, into another level. And I think that's a great thing. For me, someone like myself, I got into that and I own one extra property now. It's a condo. I had several properties, and I'm not a handyman. I'm not a guy who can go fix stuff. So I was always having to pay retail to get stuff fixed. And it was just costing me too much. And it was too much of a hassle. The condo, I don't pay anything to get anything done there. They take care of the roofs. They take care of the outside. If anything goes wrong, pretty much is covered by the condo association. So I do have that. And like I said, that's gone up a ton since I bought it. And so has the rental income has gone up a ton. So I think rental income is a good investment, to be honest with you. The only thing is, if that day comes where, everything's falling apart, you're not going to be able to sell it because the whole bottom's going to fall out of it. So you're not going to be able to take it with you. That's what a lot of people are worried about. A lot of Bitcoiners are worried about is being able to take it with you if you have to. If it's one of those situations where, because let's face it, whenever a country falls, they don't let the people out. And then when they do let the people out, they don't let them take anything with them. Whether it's Hong Kong, whether it's Russia, wherever it's at, they don't let you take stuff with you. You leave and you've got like the clothes on your back, and I know that, it's hard to imagine that in this great country we've lived in, because we've had compared to the rest of the world, for 100 years, we've had such a great place. But it can happen anywhere. Let's face it, Nicaragua, or I'm trying to think of what country. Oh,
Venezuela?
Venezuela, thank you. It was one of the best, richest countries in the world. And now it's been a mess. It's a dog pit forever. And Argentina was the same way. Milei's back in power there, but they got into this socialist stuff. And once they get into this socialist stuff, it goes down quickly But both of those countries in South America were top countries, with money and beauty and stuff, and they both went in the toilet. So it can happen anywhere once. I can't name a country where socialism stepped in and everybody said, "Oh man, this is the best thing that's ever happened to this country." It just doesn't happen. I mean,
you got to get into academia, and then you'd probably
then you'll have some arguments.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of like
in the States. In the States, there's different states, right? Like, and some have more socialist leanings, I guess you would say, and some seem to be, people congregate there if they, they're seeking freedom or Bitcoin. I don't know. You're in Texas. I don't know what the vibe is like there.
Texas is a pretty free state here.
Yeah,
I would actually think we're one of the freest states, one of the biggest non-socialist states. Actually,
for a certain
the
profile,
state
right?
attorney general just filed a lawsuit against the State Fair of Texas for not allowing guns inside. Okay, so we're pretty much here believing the Bill of Rights. They said someone got shot last year, and they said, okay, this year no one can bring in guns, and he's suing them, for not letting people bring their guns in. So we're pretty much believing the Constitution here.
Well, do you see that changing at all? Because as a real estate investor, I'm looking at the states and looking at different markets to invest in. I've looked at Texas and just looking at the outflow from traditionally blue states, right? So California, New York, like they're all going to Texas, right? And there's some overflow into the other southern states, but where you've got Austin is, maybe it's not blue, but it's purple, I would think, right?
Yeah, Austin is where the liberals all want to go. They all want to go there. Matter of fact, you go out to California and you go to San Francisco right now, and you're talking to someone and you're at a conference, you say, "Oh, I'm from Texas." They're all going to say, "I sure want to go to Austin someday." They never go, "I want to go to Dallas," or "I want to go to Houston," or "I want to go to San Antonio." They all want to go to Austin.
When they say someday, they mean very soon.
Yeah.
They want to leave San Francisco.
Well, they should. We get a lot of people here, and you would think, this is not new, though. When I was a kid, I grew up in South Carolina, like I said. And even when I was a kid, we had a term. There were Yankees and there were damn Yankees. Now, a Yankee was someone that moved, from, let's say, New York to Charleston, South Carolina. That was a Yankee. They were born above the Mason-Dixon line. A damn Yankee was that same person, but they were like going, this would be a lot better here if we could change this, so that we did this instead. That's a damn Yankee. So that's not like a new concept of people moving from another area and wanting to change where they moved to. So it's more like where they just left. You would think they go, "I don't want to change this. I don't want it to be anything like where I left." But they do. That's a natural progression to want to change. To even if you left because it was horrible, you still want to change. "I don't want to change everything. I just want to change these few things." And next thing you know, it's.
Oh man, yeah, familiar with that for sure.
But Texas is a great place to come. It really is. I mean, we don't have income. We don't have state income tax. We don't have our property taxes are way cheaper than a lot of people's. Well, it's higher than some people's too, I think. But not paying the income taxes is a really nice move. I love that. And there's no state capital gains taxes either, so that's nice too.
Yeah. Well, we're from Canada. Things are a little bit different up here.
Your government just takes your money out your bank account, freezes it.
We're the California of the North.
That's hard to believe they could freeze your bank account, but that's the kind of thing Bitcoiners are worried about. They're worried about that, is people freezing your bank accounts and things like that. So Bitcoiners, for the most part, are very concerned about the government overstepping its boundaries.
Yeah, and I think that was a big turning point. It was for me specifically, and a lot of other people I've talked to as well who were paying attention, is when bank accounts were frozen a few years ago. Everybody's like, most people are like, whatever, it's just, part of the news cycle and who cares. But
and it wasn't, if it wasn't you and you didn't get your account frozen, it's probably, whatever. Those people, they deserved it.
Yeah, behave and you'll be fine. But it's like, no.
That's
Say
an
the right
issue
things.
that everybody has. I think my wife says this all the time. Everybody's just doing their best to get by and make it work and make it through life with their kids and live day to day, that they can't keep up with all these other things going on. So they're not even aware of what's going on for the most part. And a lot of people don't watch the news much. I grew up with that's one thing we did have. We had the news on it all the time when I was a kid. So I do pay a lot of attention to news, but a lot of people don't. And like I said, they have so much going on. That's not what they want to, they just don't, they just can't do it. They have too much going on, with their kids and their life, just trying to get by.
Yeah, we try not to watch the news because it's so negative and distracting.
Well, I think I watch, I say I watch TV, but I watch YouTube. That's all I watch.
Okay.
So I can watch bits, the bits I need to see. I don't have to watch, I wouldn't want to watch my wife watches news, some ABC news. I'm going, I got to get out the room. She goes, this isn't that bad. I'm going, Kathy, this is terrible.
Well, because if you're into podcasting, right, and you're listening to podcasts, like you're self-selecting what media you're consuming, right? And you're not just listening to radio or...
No, I do. And so you could also say that I'm feeding whatever I want to believe, since I am a conservative, I watch mostly conservative stuff. But I pretty much see a lot of stuff. I don't know. That has nothing to do with marketing, though. I probably got you guys way off your normal base here.
No, that's okay. That's good. That's what we want.
Hey, I do want to recommend a book to everybody.
Yeah.
If anyone ever wants to read anything on Bitcoin, get the Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous. It's a great book. It's he goes into what you need to understand. He goes into what is money and explains what money is, and then goes into Bitcoin. Because money has changed over the years. At one point money was tulips. At one point money was gold. At one point money was silver. At one point money was big rocks, fancy rocks. So it was, so he goes over what money actually is and then breaks it into Bitcoin. So the Bitcoin Standard is a book I highly recommend. I don't want to give out a referral link because, like I said, my goal is not to make money off people. I'm fine in life. I would rather people learn stuff. So that's a great book.
Yeah.
Has Saif been to your conference too?
He was at the first two conferences I did. Actually, I contacted him last week and talked to him and said, hey, can we get you to come back to BitBlock Boom? And he said, I cannot come to the U.S. right now. He's from Lebanon.
He's Lebanese, right?
Lebanese, yeah. And he goes, I have been so outspoken about what's going on right now that I don't feel I'll be safe in the U.S. I said, fair enough.
Wow.
I said, we'll shoot later down the road. But his book is great. Whatever his politics or religion is, that's not any of my concern. But his book is great.
Oh yeah, I agree. We both read that book, and I think the first little bit going through the history of money and what money is. Most people don't think about what money is at all, right? You don't even question the dollars in your pocket, anything.
That's a big rabbit hole to go down too.
Yeah. Hence why we started this podcast.
Money is, and you're right. Most people have no idea what money is. They have it in their pockets. They earn it. They work for it. They spend it, but they really don't know.
They spend a lot of hours working for it too.
A lot of their life turning their energy into pieces of paper that really are pretty much worthless when you get down to it. When everything hits the fan.
And that goes back to that comment you made off the top about people saying, what's it backed by? Well, what's Bitcoin backed by? I guess what is the dollar backed by? You say it's backed by nothing.
Well, the U.S. Army, the U.S. military.
Yeah, the U.S. Army.
If you like Gaddafi wanted to start buying oil wanted to make a currency, an African gold currency, to start buying with oil with that. And you saw it happen to him really quick. I mean, you don't do that too often and get away with it if you're a country, if you want to get off the U.S. dollar. So,
no.
I'm not saying Gaddafi was a good guy, but nothing happened to him until he started, wanting to get off the U.S. dollar. Yeah,
there's lots of guys who aren't good guys out there, and they're still there. Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay, so Gary,
it's
we gotta
for everybody to figure that out, and find out for themselves. I always say, and this is the last thing I want to say about Bitcoin because I didn't mean to hog your show about it, but people need to educate themselves. Whether they buy any or not, they shouldn't have their whole head in a hole in the ground going, oh, that's stupid. They should find out for themselves because there may be a day that they're going, wow, I need to do something, but they aren't educated at all, So I think it's good knowledge to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, we've talked about, I think we did an episode on the Bitcoin Standard. Was it one? Or a few, maybe.
Yeah.
Lynn Alden's Broken Money. I don't know if you've read that, but that's also, she really gets
Actually, I'm
into...
reading that right now. I got
there you go.
chapters left. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was eye-opening for me, just the early credit systems as well. So we don't have to get into all that, but I think you're right. Whether or not you want to get into Bitcoin, educate yourself a little bit, and that means you need to know a little bit of history and debt cycles and everything else. So, anyways, I don't want to hog out your whole day, Gary, but so you figured out e-commerce early. You figured out podcasting early. Is there anything else you see that, that we should get into now? Or what's the next big thing? I'm being very selfish. What's the next big thing, Gary? Tell us.
Well, at the age of 70, I'm probably on
vacationing.
The downside of going into new things. So Bitcoin will probably be the last. You got to face it, though. Bitcoin's only 3% of the world has any Bitcoin. I mean, you got to face it. It's not like I hear people go, "Oh, it's too late. I wish I'd got it in early." But the people who bought Bitcoin at $100 probably said, "Damn, I could have gotten this a year and a half ago for 50 cents." The people who got into it $1,000 probably said, "Oh, I could have gotten this for $100." And the people who got in at $10,000, I could have got into it for $1,000. So it's not like we're near the top of it eventually. So I think it's going to be a big thing. I think it's just starting to become a big thing. Let me rephrase it. Because podcasting, gosh, I remember maybe it was 2010. I went to a conference to talk about podcasting, and I thought I'd do a video. And I went up to my local 7-Eleven on the corner and took a video camera, and I was going to ask 100 people if they had ever heard of podcasting and what was it. And 99 people, and podcasting came out in 2004. So podcasting had been out 6 years, and 99 people had never heard of it 6 years later. And one person said, "Yeah, I've heard of podcasting." I said, "Oh, well, I got a hot one here. What is it?" And he goes, "Well, it's for fishing. It's podcasting. You cast out the pot." So 6 years after podcasting was invented, no one out of 100 people that I asked had ever heard of it even. So that's why I said, just because Bitcoin's been out, 12, 14 years, whatever, it's not like, it's all saturated and it's way too late. So I'm going to say Bitcoin is the next thing. It hasn't reached this top yet. Yeah. It's the last thing I'll be into. Next time something that comes out, I'll probably have a drool cup or be on the beach somewhere.
Well, you talked about drop shipping, right? I mean, there are still people learning about drop shipping and doing businesses, and this is how many years later, right? I mean, look at Amazon. Yeah. So there's
it's a whole different market out there on the internet now, though. With Amazon, oh my gosh. I mean, and the thing about Amazon, if you put stuff on there to sell, and it's because people our store puts stuff on there, and it's selling too good, well, they're going to start stocking it and selling it and competing against you. And you'll be out of business because they'll sell it cheaper. So they're tracking all the numbers. They go, "Oh my gosh, this widget over here is selling like no tomorrow. Contact them. Let's start getting that widget in or getting a copy of it made in China." It's like, but if you don't use them, oh my gosh, that's a nightmare. Yeah, they'll take over someday probably.
Yeah, that'll be the next one. It won't be the U.S. dollar. It'll be Amazon dollars or maybe Facebook bucks or something, right?
You ever see that movie with Kurt Russell in L.A. when he's trying to get the president out of L.A. or something? Escape from L.A.?
Is that the one where he's got the sunglasses and he can... No, that's Rowdy Piper. Sorry, he looks like Kurt Russell.
Oh, anyways, that's Rowdy Piper. I know which one you're talking about. No, this is he's like Snake Plissken is his name. This came out in the 90s. There was Escape from New York, and then the Escape from L.A. was the second one. Okay. Well, anyway, in Escape from L.A., it came out in the maybe late 80s, early 90s. He's in L.A. They put a wall around L.A., and L.A.'s a prison. And he's been sent into the prison to get the president's daughter or something. Anyway, he's like, "I'm here. I am authorized to give you $50 million. And they go, $50 million? Is that greenbacks or bluebacks? Because see, in this movie, futuristic movie, the dollar had already gone to hell, and the dollar had come out with a new currency, a blue dollar, which was worth a lot, but the green dollar wasn't worth anything. So actually, Carpenter, who wrote that movie, kind of foresaw money was going to go down the toilet. He just didn't know about digital money because it hadn't been invented yet. So he assumed they would print a different dollar bill, a blue one. So it was kind of, and that was kind of interesting when you think about that. That even Carpenter wrote a science fiction movie back then. He realized even back then, when we were probably only $5 trillion in debt. I don't know what we were, but I was guessing that it was unsustainable. That we would have to have a different currency.
I wonder if he would be surprised at how far it's gone, like the 35 trillion or...
Yeah, because like I said, back then, I didn't even know what it was, but it wasn't close. I think it went to 20 trillion under Obama.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It's hard to even fathom what that means. Yeah,
people can't. That's the problem. They can't fathom how much $1 trillion is. Yeah. I mean, how many billions are there in a trillion? I mean,
oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, listen, I think we got to wrap up there. My kids are itching to get to the beach.
Hey, I've enjoyed it. For other reasons too. I've enjoyed it, guys.
It's been good.
I always enjoy talking. Yeah, I always enjoy talking. My tip to everybody is, if any podcast ever asks you to come on, you need to come on. You really do, because that podcast, it could be someone's. Because I've had people go, "Hey, thanks for going on. This is my first episode." I mean, that's fine, because you don't know when that guy's show is going to become so popular and have millions of listeners, and everybody goes through that back catalog, listening. So everybody should be on every podcast they can get on. I mean, you never know when you're going to be on the next Joe Rogan show,
Yeah. Hey, kudos to you, Gary. I don't think that's going to happen with us, but you never know.
You never know.
Hey, where can people find you, Gary? What's your...
I'm just Gary Leland pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
I think I'm like the first 5 pages of Google and Gary Leland.
Yeah, your face is on the back of this one. Yeah. So Bitcoin and the American Dream.
Yeah, that's a book we wrote. That was a week living with 8 people to write that book. We wrote that book in a week. Wow. We all went to Austin from all over the country and got an Airbnb, and we spent we started at 9 in the morning and worked till 3 in the morning on that book. So that was a project for a week. I would not do that again. But it was. I made some good friends.
Yeah.
I would not do that.
That's cool.
It's called a book sprint.
Book sprint. Yeah. We'll keep it in mind. Sorry, Brent. What were you saying?
So we'll link to this in the show notes as well, and then put a link to the BitBlock Boom conference. Hopefully, so it's April. You switched it from August to April. So
August was so hot. That's the hottest month there is in Texas, where April is great. The weather's just beautiful here. So, and actually being in April makes us maybe the first conference of the year. So for people who haven't been to a conference, I've been to a conference in 4 months. By August, they've been to 10.
And you can bring your gun with.
You can bring your gun. We do a gun event there.
Oh, okay.
We rent a shooting range, an indoor shooting range. This year we might do outdoor because the weather's so nice now that we're not in August. But we're in the guns there for sure.
Any other munitions hand grenades? Does that put the boom in BitBlock Boom?
But a lot of people who come from that's pretty clever. A lot of people who come from Europe and places like that have never even touched the gun. So they're really excited to go to the gun range. We provide guns and shells and stuff. And so a lot of people really get into that. I never shot a gun. This is great. I never knew how good it was to shoot a gun. When I was a kid, we had a gun in every room and probably in every closet. You came into our house, chances of you getting out of our house was pretty slim.
You got to touch a gun every day just to move it to get your underwear on.
Okay. Well, you're stacking up the points in favor of going, Gary. So I think we may have to add this to our list of conferences.
Yeah, you'd enjoy Texas in general. I mean, it's a great place to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up there, guys. Gary, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. We appreciate it. I had a great time as well. And look for Gary, the Bitcoin Boomer, or just search for Gary Leland, and you'll find him there. And maybe we'll see you at the conference in April.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Enjoyed it, guys. Thanks for the invite.
Okay, thank you to our listeners for listening if you made it this far. And until next time,
steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
And if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.